Subscribe to Echo Tales for deeply emotional, romantic, and mature stories that echo through your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support meaningful storytelling. There's something about autumn that makes the heart more tender. The way the wind carries old memories and the trees let go without fear. That was the day Elena met him. The city was quiet, kissed by golden light, and the sidewalk outside the gallery was littered with crisp leaves crunching beneath her boots. She hadn't planned on going out, especially not to an art exhibit, but something inside her needed beauty, needed escape. She was the kind of woman who noticed details, the silence between brushstrokes, the way shadows fell in corners, how love lingered in spaces people left behind. She wasn't expecting Ryan. He was standing in front of a photograph of a storm, wind tearing through trees, light fractured through clouds, and he looked like he belonged inside it. Wild, unapologetic, handsome in the kind of way that makes you cautious, not curious. But then he turned, caught her watching him, and smiled like she'd been the one on display all along. "I like your eyes," he said, no hesitation. "They don't blink when they're curious." Elena blinked, then cheeks warm. She almost laughed. But something about him felt familiar, in a way that had nothing to do with the past, and everything to do with the ache of longing she carried quietly inside. They wandered the gallery together, talking like old friends, rediscovering a forgotten rhythm. He told her he was a writer who rarely finished anything. She told him she was a reader who often wished stories didn't end. Coffee followed, then dinner, then slow walks by the river where the silence between them grew softer, deeper, like a song waiting for its final note. Ryan was all motion, quick to laugh, quick to touch her hand, quick to say things like, "I feel like I've known you forever," as if forever could be decided in days. And Elena, who had always taken her time with everything, trust, love, even happiness, felt herself slipping into something faster than she'd ever allowed. She wanted to believe it was real, that he meant every word, every glance, every night. He sent her pictures of the moon saying, "Wish you were under this with me." But it scared her. He scared her. Not because he was cruel or careless, but because he was the kind of man who made promises without knowing he was making them. He made her heart sprint, but she wasn't built to run. One night, they stood by the river again, watching the city shimmer like it was made of wishes. He held her hand, said something funny, and kissed her on the forehead so gently it felt like goodbye. That's when she looked at him, heart thudding against the ribs of her doubt, and whispered, "Ryan, can we slow down?" Her voice was soft, unsure, wrapped in hope and fear. He didn't pull away, he didn't laugh, but he didn't say anything either. He just stared at the water, then at her, then back at the lights like they held answers he couldn't give. That silence stayed with her, all the way home, into her dreams, and the days after. She didn't know what it meant, if she had asked, for too little or too much. All she knew was that something shifted in that moment, something she wouldn't fully understand until it was too late. Elena had always believed that when love changed, you could feel it long before it was spoken. And now, every day with Ryan felt like walking through a familiar room where the lights had slowly dimmed. It wasn't one moment, but a collection of them. The way his texts had shortened from paragraphs to one-word replies, how his voice over the phone no longer carried that warm tremble it used to when he said her name, and how the space between his arms felt wider, even when he was holding her. Yet whenever they were together, truly together, there was still something magic in the air. A flicker of the man who once stared at her like she was a sunrise he couldn't look away from. Elena clung to that spark, afraid to name the growing ache in her chest. Maybe she had scared him when she asked to slow down. Maybe he thought it meant she didn't feel as deeply. But that wasn't it at all. She was falling, slowly, carefully, falling in the way people do when their hearts have been broken before, and all they want is to make sure it's safe this time. She didn't want a love that burned out like a match. She wanted one that stayed, steady as candlelight. So she gave him patience. She gave him grace. She waited. Until one evening, under the soft buzz of string lights at their favorite cafe, she waited for him. And he didn't come. Her tea cooled. Her hope cooled with it. She watched the door each time it opened, smiling politely at strangers, her heart sinking deeper with every tick of the clock. An hour passed before her phone lit up. Sorry. Got caught up. You okay? Just 5 words. Nothing more. It felt like being handed an umbrella in a thunderstorm. Too little. Too late. But still, her fingers moved before her heart could stop. Them. I'm okay. Just missed you. She stared at the message, willing him to reply, to say something that would pull her back into the warmth of what they used to be. But the screen stayed dark. The silence that followed wasn't loud. It was hollow, empty, and cruel in its quietness. That night, Elena walked home through streets she once strolled with him, and the city, so alive with color when they were together, now seemed washed in gray. The next day brought answers she never wanted. She hadn't meant to see it, wasn't trying to, but fate has a twisted sense of timing. She was leaving the bookstore when she saw him across the street, laughing, alive in a way she hadn't seen him in weeks. But he wasn't alone. A woman stood beside him, her hand resting casually on his arm. They were close, comfortable, the kind of closeness that only comes from memory, or something else. Elena froze, breath caught somewhere between disbelief and heartbreak. She didn't move, didn't cry. She just watched, her heart cracking, quietly beneath the weight of unspoken truths. He didn't see her. Or maybe he did, and chose not to react. That was almost worse. She turned before she could fall apart in public, her steps shaky, her chest heavy. Back in her apartment, she curled into the quiet, her phone in her hand, her thumb hovering over his name. She wanted to scream, to ask who that woman was, to ask if she was right to feel this shift all along. But no message came, no explanation. Just the echo of her own words from days ago. Can we slow down? Now haunting her like a question he never answered. And maybe he already had. Some truths arrive not like thunder, but like a slow, steady rain. You feel them long before you can explain them. That's how it felt for Elena in the days after seeing Ryan with the woman across the street. The image kept replaying in her, mind like a scene from a film she never agreed to watch. His laugh, so easy. Her hand, so familiar on his arm. The way they leaned into each other like they shared 1,000 yesterdays. But what shattered Elena more than the sight itself was the silence that followed. No message, no apology, no knock on her door. She told herself maybe there was an explanation, maybe it wasn't what it looked like. But in her heart, she knew. Something had shifted. She couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every place they had touched with their memories now felt like it echoed with a version of him that was slipping through her fingers. Then, one gray morning, her phone lit up. Just 3 words. Can we talk? Her chest tightened. A storm brewed inside her, made of anger and longing, and the desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, he would say something to fix it all. They met at the park, the same one where he first brushed his lips across her forehead like a promise. Now, the sky hung heavy with clouds, and the bench beneath them felt colder than she remembered. He was already sitting when she arrived, fingers laced, gaze low. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The wind rustled the leaves like a whisper, urging one of them to begin. "Who was she?" Elena finally asked, voice quiet but steady, even though everything inside her was trembling. Ryan looked up, eyes filled with something unreadable. Guilt, regret, maybe even sorrow. "Her name is Mara," he said after a pause. "We were something once, before you." She showed up again. "I didn't expect it." Elena swallowed, the lump in her throat aching. "Are you going back to her?" The question came out fragile, wrapped in fear, even though she had rehearsed it 100 times in her mind. He hesitated. That hesitation was an answer in itself. "I don't know," he whispered. And that was the moment her heart cracked in two. She had been so careful, so measured, asking him to slow down not because she didn't want him, but because she did. Because she saw forever in him, and forever scared her more than any heartbreak ever could. And yet here he was, unsure, torn between a past that had returned and a future that needed patience. "I begged you to slow down," she said, voice breaking. "Not because I didn't care, but because I wanted this to last. I just needed time, not distance." Ryan looked at her then, really looked at her, like he was seeing the pieces of her heart laid bare for the first time. "I was afraid," he confessed, barely louder than the wind. "Afraid if we slowed down, you'd realize you didn't want me. I thought I had to keep it burning fast or you'd lose interest." His words hung there, aching between them. She wanted to scream, to tell him he had it all wrong. But instead, she stood. There were no tears left to fall, only silence. "You didn't need to burn for me, Ryan," she said softly. "You just had to stay." She turned and walked away, not out of anger, but because sometimes the bravest thing love demands is letting someone go when they can't walk your pace. Behind her, the wind picked up. The leaves swirled, and the man who once held her like he'd never let go didn't follow. The weeks that followed felt like moving through a dream she couldn't wake from, a dream where everything looked the same but nothing felt right. Elena drifted through her days in silence, the kind of silence that hums through an empty room after someone leaves. Ryan was everywhere and nowhere all at once. His favorite coffee mug still sat untouched in her cabinet. The sweater he once draped over her shoulders on that windy walk still hung by the door. But he wasn't there. And she didn't hear from him. Not even a whisper. It would have been easier, she thought, if he had been cruel. If he had ended things with sharp words or final doors. But instead, he'd left her in between, in the hollow ache of, I don't know. Her heart had become a place of unfinished sentences. And still, she missed him. Every morning she woke wondering if he missed her too. If he looked at his phone and hesitated. If he thought of her when the rain hit the glass. Then one evening, as she returned from work, tired, empty, quiet, she noticed something in her mailbox. A letter. No return address. Just her name written, in a hand she could recognize in her sleep. Her fingers trembled as she opened it, the paper soft and worn like it had been held too tightly, too long. His words bled across the page in ink slightly smudged, maybe by rain, or maybe by his own tears. I should have stopped, the letter began. That night you asked me to slow down. I should have listened. I thought you were pulling away, but now I see. You were pulling me in. You weren't asking me to go slower because you didn't care. You were asking me to love you better, and I didn't know how. Her eyes blurred as she read on. I ran from something beautiful because it scared me. You scared me, Elena, not because you were too much, but because you were everything. And I wasn't ready for something that real. But I want to be. If there's still a corner of your heart that hasn't closed, I'm standing in it, waiting. No fast moves, no pressure, just me, standing still, hoping you'll walk toward me when you're ready. She didn't realize she was crying until the tears hit the envelope. For a long moment she stood there, clutching the letter like it could bring him back into the room. And then, drawn by some invisible thread, she walked to the window. Her breath caught. There he was, outside her building, standing in the rain with no umbrella, his hair soaked, holding a single white daisy in his hand. The same kind she once told him reminded her of home. He didn't wave, didn't call out, just looked up at her with eyes full of quiet hope, the kind of look that says, "I'm not leaving, not this time." Without thinking, Elena rushed to the door, her feet bare, her heart open. The rain kissed her cheeks as she stepped outside, but she didn't feel cold. Not anymore. She walked straight into his arms, not running, not rushing, just moving at the rhythm of her own heart. And Ryan? He stayed right there, arms open, steady and sure. For the first time, they weren't running toward or away from anything. They were just there, together, present and real. Because in the end, love isn't about how fast you fall. It's about who waits for you to catch up, and who stays, even in the rain.